I was waiting at my airport gate when a duck in a tiny purple vest started digging through the bag under my chair, and a man 2 seats down shot up. "Get away from Pumpkin!" I threw my hands up. "I'm not even touching her. That's your own bag you shoved under my chair." My boarding pass was already crumpled in my fist because this was the last flight home after being gone for 2 weeks. He laughed before turning to everyone. "She's bonded to me and won't go near anybody else." The whole gate was nodding along, so I was about to lose that flight over a duck that wasn't even mine. He worked the whole gate. He's got food in his pocket. He keeps calling her over, but Pumpkin waddled right past me to a little kid and snatched the cracker out of his hand. "See? He's got her stealing off children now." A gate agent pushed through and the man grabbed Pumpkin by the neck, clamping her under his arm as she thrashed. "This guy's luring my support animal to steal her. Check his pockets." I turned mine inside out with nothing to show, my hands shaking as every phone swung to me, but the agent told me to step away from the animal anyway. The agent reached for my arm, so I stepped back and called his bluff. "You're so sure she's yours? Carry her out then and see if she even lets you." The man grinned like he'd already won and hauled his bag up with Pumpkin pinned under his arm, marching for the gate. Pumpkin lost it. She twisted up into his face so he dropped everything as she rode him down to the floor. "Pumpkin, baby, it's me! It's me!" She latched onto his hand so he flipped onto his back, kicking. "Somebody help! Get this thing off me! Get it off!" Nobody in that crowd lifted a finger to help him. He bolted down the terminal with Pumpkin right behind him, and the agent turned to me. "Go catch your flight." I stepped over his bag. "Guess she's bonded to you after all." My grandma walked out into the open street with her eyes closed. A bus was seconds away from hitting her, and I screamed her name and sprinted towards her, but suddenly, the bus disappeared. I stood there frozen in shock. She laughed and held out her hands to show me her bug. "This is a lucky cricket. It protected me." I laughed. "Grandma, what are you talking about?" she whispered. "I know a lucky charm when I see one." My heart was pounding with adrenaline because I couldn't understand what was going on, and it felt like my grandma was pranking me. I held out my hands for her to give me the cricket. "Aight, let me test this out for myself." I walked into the corner store with no cash and grabbed a soda. Before I reached the counter, strangers started pressing cash into my hands, 20s and 50s, more than I could hold. A guy by the door spun his keys on his finger. "Been wanting to give my BMW to somebody who deserves it for free. Give back to the world, you know? You want it?" Grandma stayed by the door, not smiling now. "With great power comes great responsibility. Don't abuse it." But I was already spinning the BMW keys around my finger. I backed onto the sidewalk, telling her I was keeping it forever. I was gloating so hard I didn't feel the cricket slip out of my fist. I stepped off the curb and felt something pop under my heel. I lifted my shoe and the cricket was flat on the concrete. I laughed. Guess it was just a regular bug. But when I turned to Grandma, she wasn't laughing. She'd gone gray, backing toward the house, whispering the same words over and over. I shrugged and thought she was just being dramatic. But that night, as I was lying in bed, I heard a heavy knock on my bedroom door. Suddenly my room went dark and the candle beside my bed extinguished. Goosebumps went up my arms and the door began to creak open, and I knew it was for me. A toddler was doing a crossword puzzle alone on the park bench, so I crouched down and asked if she was lost. She swatted my hand away. "I am a 40-year-old woman, you absolute buffoon." I stepped back and saw she was 2 feet tall, and I figured she was just a confused toddler who'd wandered off, so I scooped her up to bring her to the police station, absolutely convinced I was doing the right thing. She kicked and twisted the whole way there. "Unhand me this instant, you enormous oaf! This is kidnapping!" I took out the tiny stuffed bear key ring from my pocket. "You cutie, calm down now." I waved the bear in her face. "Look, someone wants to meet you." She pinched me as hard as she could. "You galloping imbecile. You must have the same intellectual capacity as a houseplant." A mom on another bench pulled her kid closer as I marched past. I held her out with 2 hands at arm's length until we got to the police station. She scoffed. "Now you'll finally see what I was talking about." I took back the bear and set her on the counter. She smoothed her tiny blazer, lifted her chin, and nodded. "Afternoon, officer." The officer nodded like they knew each other. "Good to see you, Diane." He pointed at me. "So, who's this guy?" She rolled her eyes. "Another idiot who thinks I'm a helpless child." He typed her name into his monitor and turned the screen around. "Diane Holding, 43 years old, world's smallest woman." She straightened her tie, lifted her chin, and delivered her verdict. "You've made a rather profound error in judgment." My mouth was open in shock, and the bear was still dangling from my finger. She tilted her head. "Are you lost?" She rallied out the door and climbed back onto a bench to pick up her crossword right where I'd interrupted it, while I stayed behind to explain why I'd hauled a grown woman in off the street. Me and my brother followed a delicious scent to our neighbor's back garden barbecue, but when I saw the grill, I gasped. "You! That's ours!" We ran to bang on his front door. When he opened, we explained he'd taken our grill, and in response, he just laughed. "Maybe this will teach you to keep things safe. We can call it character development." He slammed the door in our faces, and I turned to my brother. "He wants the grill? Fine, but everything he cooks on it belongs to us." He raised an eyebrow, and I grinned. "Meet me by the back fence, and all will be revealed." I ran to the garage and grabbed 2 fishing rods and carried them to my brother. "Check me out." When no one was looking, I reeled it back, caught one of the cooked patties from the grill, grill and dropped it into my mouth. When our neighbor returned to his grill, he frowned. A seagull must have stolen one of the patties. After that, he camped by the grill, so we switched strategies. My brother strolled back to the front door. "Hey Dale, can we borrow some ketchup, please? And thank you." While Dale lectured him about respect, I swooped into his garden with my book bag wide open and finessed his entire table of hot dogs. I quickly jumped back over the fence, and when Dale returned to his empty table, he went red with anger, and I started throwing his food at him. He looked up at me with gravy dripping down his face. "Give me back my food." I crossed my arms. "Give us back our grill." He ignored me and put another patty on the grill with a huge smirk on his face. So I whipped out the fishing rod right in front of him, but instead of stealing the food again, I lifted him into a wedgie. He scrambled in the air to run away, and I started twirling him around. Now this is what you call peak character development. He was forced to watch as my brother wheeled our grill out of his garden and back to our house. I threw a hot dog into his mouth to reward him, and he smiled from how delicious it was. Worth it. My best friend pointed at the crane wrecking ball in our school's field and said, "I bet the keys are still in it. Our principal had brought this to knock down an old shed." I laughed. "Nah, man." But Braden was already climbing the fence. I had no choice but to follow him, and my jaw dropped as I saw the keys right there. Braden climbed in. "Time to go Miley Cyrus on this bitch." He immediately grabbed the level, and the giant wrecking ball swung at me. I panicked and jumped back, but Braden swung again. I screamed, "I'm not letting you flatten my then dodged and climbed in, pushing Braden away as he fell out, still laughing. "Your turn, ball boy." I swung, and immediately lost control. The wrecking ball began swinging way further than I meant, and Braden started shaking on the ground because the ball was moving unpredictably, and he could actually be hit. I screamed, "Miley Cyrus help," and pushed random buttons, but then the wrecking ball slammed into the science wing. A giant hole instantly formed in the wall, and the alarm started blaring. I gripped my head, panicking because I knew we'd be arrested for this, so I hopped out and screamed, "Run!" But then Braden grabbed my shoulder. "Dude, wait!" He grinned and pointed at the wall I'd smashed, and my stomach sank. A man we didn't recognize was lying unconscious under a pillar of rubble in the science lab, surrounded by tin cans. The latch on the ceiling was open, and Braden yelled, "I told you that weird noise was someone living in the ceiling." He ran towards the man, and I ran as well, but when we got to him, my eyes widened. I recognized this man as someone on America's Most Wanted list. I pulled out my phone, and his face matched. $250,000 reward, and me and Braden had found him by destroying the science wing. We instantly called the cops because he was still breathing, and when they arrived, they cuffed him and brought us in too. Me and Braden got the $250,000 on the spot. 40 of it went to the school to repair the wall, and we did 300 hours of community service. But the principal still had to shake our hands in front of the whole school and thank us for destroying his wall. "This is for solving a 15-year case." He put a medal around mine and Braden's neck. I kissed my medal. "Thank you, Miley Cyrus." I slid into the back of my Uber, but my driver wouldn't say a word. He gripped the wheel and drove, staring straight ahead, not even confirming my name. I asked to use the charger beside him as I was low on battery, but he didn't even respond. I remember feeling annoyed, and my thumb hovered over the 1-star rating for bad customer service. Then I noticed a note taped to the dashboard. "To my riders, I lost my son 4 days ago. If I speak, I will cry, but I need to keep driving to afford his funeral. Please let me drive you in silence." I looked at him, and suddenly my phone being low on battery didn't seem like a problem anymore. I instantly tipped him the max, because we never truly know what the strangers next to us are carrying. I was walking on the beach when I saw an elderly couple screaming and pointing at the ocean. I followed their hands and spotted a little boy, maybe 6, caught in the current, his arms slapping at the water as it dragged him out to sea. "Lucas! He's drowning! Someone help him!" they cried. But the old man had only made it knee-deep before his wife pulled him back, both far too frail to reach him. There were no lifeguards, no one else but us. They screamed at me, "Can you save him? Please! He's all we have!" My heart pounded because I hadn't touched the ocean since I nearly drowned in it as a kid, but I couldn't stand there and watch Lucas die, so I ran into the waves. The water was freezing, and my whole body started shivering. The current yanked me under before I even reached him, but I fought my way back up, kicking with everything I had. My chest burned, and panic clawed at me as the harder I swam, the farther out I drifted. "Help! Help!" Lucas screamed, gasping as the waves swallowed him. So I clawed toward him and grabbed his arm, but the second I held him up, I couldn't even keep myself afloat, and had no idea how I'd get him back to shore. I spotted the boats and screamed, thrashing and splashing, "Help us! We're drowning!" But they were too far, and never moved. My stomach dropped. No one was coming. Then Lucas went limp in my arms, slipping under. So I shoved him above my head with everything left in me, refusing to let go, even as the water poured into my mouth and I couldn't breathe. Just as my vision went black, Lucas's weight suddenly vanished from my arms. Before I could understand what happened, a hand clamped around mine and yanked me up, breaking the surface. I gasped and coughed as someone hauled me onto a boat. "If you hadn't held that boy up over the water, we never would have spotted you all the way out here," one of them said. But beside me, Lucas lay limp, and I begged him to wake up, scared it was too late. The second we reached the sand, he coughed and spit out a mouthful of water. His grandparents crashed onto their knees and wrapped him in their arms, sobbing. Then the grandma grabbed my hand. If you hadn't gone in, we would have lost him. You're a hero. But I looked out at the water that almost killed me and decided I'm never going to a beach again. My mom and her boyfriend walked into my room. We're going out. We'll be back at 3 a.m. We trust you. After 3 hours went by, I felt extremely lonely. So I went to grab my Woody cowboy toy when suddenly he stood up and waved. Howdy, partner. My entire body completely froze up. What is going on? And suddenly, every toy in the toy box stood up and climbed out towards me. Peppa Pig and George, SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy Cheeks, and Buzz Lightyear. They hit the floor running, and I slid off my bed into the middle of them, laughing so hard I covered my mouth. This is insane. Is this real, or am I dreaming? SpongeBob laughed. We're as real as the Krabby Patty formula. Tell us what you want us to do. We're here until the end of the night. I tilted my head. What happens after that? Sandy jumped. No time to explain. Just tell us what you want. 6-year-old me stood up, not questioning the logic. Dance off. Girls versus boys. They separated to dance, and I pointed at Patrick. Do the robot. He completely stiffened himself and started doing the robot like a pro, while Buzz Lightyear beatboxed. I clapped and laughed hysterically like it was the best night of my life, because it was. Perfect! And when we heard the car in the driveway, all of us froze because the night was over, and I had no idea what would happen next. The front door opened, and Woody put his hand on my leg. You won't see us again, he said, but I hope we kept you company. My mom started walking up the stairs, and all the toys flopped over. When she opened the door, she flipped on the light and rubbed her face at the mess. What did you do in here? Clean it up and go to bed. When she left, I picked Woody up and waited for him to lift his arm. He stared up at the ceiling, stuffed and still. I held him against my chest anyway and turned off the light. I was helping the captain steer the Titanic ship in the year 1912 when the lookout on deck screamed, "Iceberg right ahead." I immediately moved my elbows to the left to steer the ship in a different direction, but the captain grabbed me. Don't stop. We're due to arrive in New York tomorrow morning, and we're the unsinkable ship. Unsinkable ships don't stop for obstacles. 10 minutes later, we heard a crunching sound on the side of the boat. I turned to the captain. We need to make the distress call to every ship in range. He crossed his arms. Absolutely not. We will pump the ship out and we'll be okay. I am not wiring the world that the unsinkable ship stopped for a scratch. Sweat dripped down my forehead because I knew I had a decision to make. I burst into the wire room where we communicated to emergency services through Morse code. Send the SOS to every ship nearby. The captain immediately grabbed me. I will have your stripes for this. Everyone will know you let me down. I grabbed my hand back. You can have them tomorrow morning after I'm done making sure everyone on this ship survives. Within the hour, the sea came over the bow rail and the deck tilted until deck chairs slid straight into the ocean. My hands were shaking as I swung women and children into the boats, and at 12:30 midnight, the captain finally started panicking. He ordered the live music orchestra to keep playing music until everyone was in the safety boats. I was planning on staying on the ship with him, but the last boat needed an officer at the oars, so I went down hating every rung. From the water, we watched her lights go out row by row. The last time I saw my captain, he was at the wheel that he never let me turn. She went under at 2:20 a.m. and took him with her. 1,500 people froze around us because he would not lose an hour. The sun came up right on schedule, and it was the only thing that did. Every year, I would buy all my family's Christmas presents. Mom would hand Dad a gift labeled "From Mom" that I'd bought, wrapped, and put under the tree myself. Everybody knew I bought the gifts, but nobody ever thanked me or got me any presents or even helped me go shopping for them. But one Christmas morning, I walked in late with all their presents still in the van outside. My parents instantly snapped. Mom said, "Why are you late? And where are the presents?" I was in disbelief because I'd warned them last night I would be late. My van broke down, and I had asked them to help, but they said no, so I had to borrow my friend's van in order to make it. I told them this, but they rolled their eyes, and my nephew scoffed. "You better have gotten me the 10-pound slime set like I asked you." I looked over, and my dad was telling my mom, "I wonder what I got you this year, honey." He smirked at me, and Mom replied, "I don't know, honey, but you're always so generous." The whole family laughed, and Mom told me to go put all the presents under the tree, then start dinner prep because she was too stressed from the lack of presents this morning to start. I was shocked, but turned to walk outside when my niece pointed at the empty Christmas tree and told me, "Chop chop, my friends already posted what they got. You're embarrassing our family." I called out, "Dad, will you help me bring the presents in?" But he was busy laughing with Mom. I tried my nephew, but he was scrolling his phone. I looked around at everyone ignoring me and walked out. I got in the van and drove off. My parents instantly called me and screamed, "Why are you leaving with the presents?" I calmly replied, "I could tell I wasn't wanted, so I'm acting like it." I hung up. 15 minutes later, they were at my front door, demanding their presents. I let them scream for a few minutes, then went upstairs, looked out my window, and called out to them, "I have one present for you." I chucked my nephew's 10-pound slime set out on them, and watched it cover them all head to toe. Then I closed the window, sat down at my laptop, and started listing every single present for sale. My friends and I were playing hide and seek after school when I spotted a low air vent with a loose grate and knew I'd found the perfect spot. The second my friends started counting, I pried it open and crawled in head first, the grate snapping shut behind me. As the youngest, I was dead set on beating the big kids, and in here, no one was ever finding me. But when I tried to wiggle back out, my shoulders jammed against the metal and my stomach dropped. I pushed harder, didn't budge, and realized if nobody found me, no one would even know I was here. Through the grate, I watched the seeker drag my friends out of their hiding spots one by one. "Found you!" he yelled, and I grinned, safe in the dark. But the cold air kept pouring over me, numbing my body, and my legs started cramping against the metal, so I figured it was time to climb out and claim my victory. When I pushed backward toward the grate, my hands slid on the freezing metal, and I lurched forward instead, wedging deeper until I couldn't move at all. My heart slammed against the metal, so I grabbed my phone to text them where I was, but it slipped out of my hand and clattered through the grate onto the floor. I had no way to call for help, so I screamed and banged my head against the metal, but I was too deep for anyone to hear me. Then, far away, I heard my friend say, "Can't find him anywhere. He probably went home." Footsteps started fading down the hall, and I would have given anything to be found, so I screamed louder than I ever had in my life. I screamed until my throat was raw, sure no one was coming. Then the doors crashed open below, and heavy footsteps filled the hall. "I've got a phone over here, and I heard screaming," a deep voice called, inches from the grate. I banged one last time, and the metal shrieked as someone wrenched the vent open, hands clamping around my legs and hauling me out into the light, freezing and gasping. Cops and firefighters loomed over me, my friends stunned behind them, and dangling from an officer's grip was my phone, the one thing that gave away where I'd disappeared. My friends ran over and hugged me. "Bro, you're a hide-and-seek legend." The chef slammed the plate down so hard sauce sprayed across my apron. "What is this garbage? Take it back. We don't serve this here." The dining room went quiet. A man at table 6 didn't even look up. He'd been writing in a notebook all night, holding his wine glass up to the light. Whoever he was, the chef hadn't noticed him yet. I took the plate back without a word. The kitchen doors hadn't stopped swinging before he started up again. 20 years I've cooked for billionaires and you can't smear sauce straight. He grabbed a towel off the counter and threw it at my chest. I trained at the French Laundry. You're slop in an apron. The other cooks kept their heads down. He pushed back through the doors, still ranting, and a couple at table 4 set down their forks. The man at table 6 hadn't even put his pen down. The chef stopped at table 6 and turned on his charm in one breath. "How is everything tonight, sir?" The man set down his pen and looked up for the first time all night. "Your line cook's plating is the best thing I've eaten in 6 months. Your behavior is the only thing failing tonight." The chef opened his mouth and nothing came out. The man closed his notebook and stood. He pulled a press ID from his jacket and tucked it back in. "I'm the food critic for the Times. The piece runs Sunday. The headline writes itself. Sunday morning, the review hit with 1 star, and my plating got its own paragraph. 6 months later, the line at my restaurant runs down the block. His place sits dark with a for lease sign in the window. I was sitting on a plane, working an undercover case against the man behind me. 10 years ago, he shot my mother in front of me, and I'd started a whole new career just for this. I clenched my fists as every cell in my body wanted to punch him, but I just calmly read my magazine. But then the flight attendant walked over to me. "Sir, there was a problem with your ID when you boarded." My stomach dropped, because if the man behind me heard something was off, he might remember my face or realize what was happening. I handed my fake ID to the attendant, and he held it against my face. "This doesn't really look like you." I'd grown my hair out for this mission, and behind me, the man who shot my mother stopped playing with his plastic switchblade. I realized he was listening in. The attendant read the name on my ID and checked his tablet. "And your name isn't on my passenger list. Are you pretending to be someone you're not?" My blood ran cold because he said it loudly, and I heard the seat behind me creak forward. "Is everything okay?" the man asked, and I felt his breath on my neck as the voice from my nightmares hit me. My fist crushed the bracelet Mom wore the night he killed her, and I wanted to choke him, but I just replied, "All good," without turning around. The attendant looked at my ID one more time, then said, "Stay here. I'm getting the captain to see if you can stay on this plane." I knew if I got off this plane, I might never find this man again, so I immediately shot out of my chair. I took my badge out from under my shirt and quickly showed it to the attendant. "I'm undercover," I whispered. "That man behind me killed my mother. I've been working this case for 3 years, so walk away and say nothing." He went pale and immediately smiled. He handed my ID back and loudly announced, "My mistake, sir. Everything is okay." I let out a breath and sat down, and the man even started playing with his plastic switchblade again. But then the attendant turned to me. "Have a safe flight, and good luck with the undercover mission, sir." My eyes went wide, and the attendant covered his mouth in horror as he realized what he'd said. The man behind me immediately got up and started sprinting off the plane. I lunged, but he was already out the door. I stared at the attendant who was frozen. "It took me 26 months just to find him, and you just ruined everything." His switchblade laid open on the seat. My sister gave our 6-year-old brother a Chinese candy bar, and he instantly started dying. Reagan had spent the last 2 years studying Mandarin in Beijing. She sent us pictures with her Chinese host parents, and had our dad sent her $500 every month for spendings. But when our brother Max pulled a granola bar from her bag and asked, "Reagan, what does this mean?" she stared at the Chinese symbols with a confused look like she didn't know a single word. My hands instantly trembled because Reagan was a compulsive liar from the day she was born. I watched her stutter, "chocolate and oats and honey," and watched Max ask if there were any peanuts. Reagan shook her head. "Nope, no peanuts anywhere." But when Max tore it open and took a bite, he instantly started wheezing. His lips swelled and his face turned red as he dropped to the floor. Reagan started freaking out, and when Dad came running and saw the unwrapped candy bar, Reagan instantly threw her hands in the air. I told Max the Chinese candy had peanuts, but he didn't listen. I gripped my head in horror and screamed back, "No, Reagan, you read the Chinese writing and told Max it was safe. You've spent 2 years in China. How could you not read if it had peanuts?" Reagan went red, but Dad was already on his knees calling the ambulance. At the hospital, Dad gripped Max's hand while I stood over Reagan in the corner. "Why didn't you tell Max the candy had peanuts?" That's when she broke down and started crying. I never went to Beijing. I spent the last 2 years in Bulgaria with my sugar daddy. I told Max there were no peanuts, so you'd think I learned Chinese and never know where I really was. I gripped my head as I realized she'd risked our brother's life to keep up her lie. Suddenly, Dad's phone dinged. A $25,000 wire transfer from Bulgaria. Reagan looked up through tears. "My sugar daddy says sorry." I placed the last box of brown hair dye into my shopping cart and continued walking, but when I turned around, I saw a woman in her mid-40s reaching into my cart and trying to take the hair dye. I moved her hand and told her, "This box is for my daughter with cancer. She wants to dye her hair her favorite color one last time before chemo." But the woman scoffed, "I have a party next month and all my friends have brown hair, so I need it more," and kept trying to take it. I called over the manager, and after the woman proudly declared her party was more important than my daughter's cancer, he kicked her out and told her she was banned. I came home with the dye and dyed my daughter's hair, but then a month later, I got a letter in the mail. The woman was suing me over the hair dye. I showed up to court with my daughter, and the woman was already sitting there, frowning like she was the victim. She stood up and told the judge I had done irreparable emotional damage to her, and pulled out photos of her from the party, showing her with blonde hair while all her friends had brown hair. She cried, "My friends laughed at me all night, Your Honor. They don't understand how hard it's been for me." The judge looked over at my daughter with her already thinning brown hair and immediately ruled in our favor. Then he looked at the woman and also ordered her to cut her hair short, because right now it's getting in her eyes and stopping her from seeing the actually important things in life. Her jaw dropped and the clippers came out. I walked into class and my teacher's finger was pointed at my chest. "Empty your bag. We both know what you stole." I put my hands in the air, no idea what she was talking about. Behind her, Daniel in the front row, wiping his eyes, and the empty spot on his wrist where his watch always sat. "That was my dad's watch," he said. "He gave it to me before he passed. Why would you steal it?" Another kid crossed his arms. "Stuff always goes missing in this class." I just stood there, accused of something I didn't do, with no idea how to prove it. The teacher snatched my backpack, and I turned it upside down as everything I owned hit the desk, but no watch. "It wasn't me, I swear. I wouldn't do that." But then the principal came in with his phone out, and we could all hear Daniel's mom screaming, "I'm suing the family of whoever stole it." Daniel just stared at the floor. That watch was all I had left of my dad. The principal turned to me. "Can you even describe what you stole?" But before I could answer, my teacher said, "Gold," his initials engraved on the back. But I immediately questioned her. "How do you know?" "Look, he's trying to blame me. Get this kid out of here." But Daniel's mom was still screaming through the phone, "Check every desk in that room, now!" The principal agreed, so they emptied my desk onto the floor, then the desk next to mine, then every desk in the row, and the watch wasn't in any of them. I didn't want to be sued, so I pointed at the one desk nobody had touched. "Check her desk. She's in this room too." The teacher froze. "You're taking a thief's word over mine? Why would I have it?" But her hands were shaking, so he reached past her and pulled the drawer open himself and gasped. There was Daniel's gold watch sitting right on top, initials face up. But then he lifted the whole drawer out and set it on her desk so everyone could see what was inside. A phone, Apple Watches, jewelry that she stole from students. The kid from earlier yelled, "That's my phone. I lost it a month ago." Kids were finding their own stuff in her drawer. Daniel's mom yelled, "I'm suing you. How dare you steal from students?" As she sobbed, I pointed and laughed. "Now everyone knows what you stole." My son had just caught the baseball from the field when a woman grabbed his wrist. My son wanted that ball. "Hand it over." Billy ripped his arm free and hugged the ball against his grandpa's old glove while our section was still cheering. I stood up and got between them. He caught it. "It's his." She pointed back at a boy a few rows up who was nervously staring at his shoes. "My son's been waiting all season. Hand it over." My heart was pounding because she wasn't leaving without that ball, but I wasn't going to let her have it. I put my hands up. "Ma'am, please. My dad brought me here every summer. He promised he'd catch Billy a ball one day, and he passed in March before he could. Catching it with the glove was his last gift." My voice cracked in front of 40 strangers. She rolled her eyes. "Nice try, but he's 7. He doesn't even know what that thing's worth." She stepped closer with her palm out, and my mouth went dry because nobody around us was getting up to help. help. That's when her son came down the steps and grabbed her sleeve, his face bright red with embarrassment. "Mom, stop. I don't even want it. You're just gonna sell it like you sold the jersey that I got at the football game." My eyes widened because she wasn't fighting for her kid. She was just fighting to have an eBay listing. She slapped his hand away without looking at him. "He's lying to be nice. He's wanted the ball all week." I was about to drag my son away when suddenly I looked up and saw that all of us were on the Jumbotron. The audience had just watched the whole thing unfold. I waved over the usher who was staring at us, and he ran over to walk her out. The booze rolled down from the upper deck as he walked her up the steps. At the top, she yanked her arm free and lifted her chin, then stumbled on the last step and caught the railing while 3 rows burst out laughing. When the inning ended, a player jogged to the netting and waved Billy down. I told him what the glove meant, and he signed the ball right through the gap. To Billy, caught with Grandpa's glove. Her son whispered, "I never wanted it. You deserved it." She tried to take a ball off a 7-year-old to flip it online, and instead, the whole stadium watched it become the one ball money can't buy. I walked into the local high school workshop where the teacher immediately introduced me. "This is Mr. Lyles. He works at NASA. He's here to help you with your rocket prototype for your live demonstration in an hour." But when I walked over to the first group, the kid packing the powder instantly sneered. "Listen, man, I don't need some intern who fetches coffee telling me what to do." I crossed my arms. "Sorry, kid, but the way you're jamming that powder in, you definitely need my help." I pulled over a chair and started widening the hole like you're meant to, but the second kid pushed me away. "Our dad is an actual rocket engineer. He said this is how you do it." I shook my head and picked up the rocket casing, but it was thinner than a can of soda. My jaw dropped as I told them I'd watched this exact setup blow up and put a kid in the hospital. They need to thicken it. But the first kid laughed in my face. "This is why you're helping kids instead of building real rockets." Our dad said that's okay. The second kid snickered. "Yeah, did they fire you?" He hugged the rocket to his chest and told me to go help someone else. So I did. Every other group listened to me. During the demonstrations, every group's rocket flew perfectly. But then, it was the 2 kids' turn. I saw the prototype and instantly shouted, "Do not light that. Your rocket will burst. You could get hurt." But the first kid rolled his eyes and turned to the teacher. "Our expert over here is a little scared, but trust us. We did everything just like our dad told us." They flicked their lighter to the powder, but the rocket didn't fly. They leaned in to light it again, and that's when the case split. The powder shot out and covered them both, and a loose piece of metal came flying and caught the first kid in the head. He fell and knocked his brother down to the floor with him. I stared at their broken rocket, then at them, covered in powder. "You do know your dad works under me, right? If he actually told you to do this, I need to have a talk with him in the morning." A woman stepped out of her house red in the face and marched over to my car, tapping her nails on my roof. I'd broken down just minutes ago and couldn't move, but she leaned in and screamed at me to move. I replied, "I'm sorry ma'am, but my car is broken down." But she cut me off and leaned through my window. "I don't care if it's broken down. Just move right now." I stared at her in disbelief and told her slowly, "My car is broken down. I cannot move it." Her face twisted in anger as she kicked my door so hard the alarm started blaring. "Are you mocking me? Move it or I'm getting my boyfriend." She stormed away before I could respond, and her boyfriend immediately stepped out. "What's the problem?" he asked me. She pointed her finger at me before I could reply. "This leech is parked here. Tell him to move." I calmly explained my car's broken down. "Can you try turn it on?" I put the key in the ignition and nothing happened. He shook his head and immediately turned to the woman. "Can't you see his car's broken down?" But she flailed her arms. "I don't know what that means. Just tell him to move." The man gripped his head while I started laughing because I couldn't believe this was happening. She instantly screamed, "He's laughing at us," and literally went to slap me, but he caught her hand. "No, he's laughing at you because you're being crazy." He exhaled, then walked back inside, while I rolled my windows up and called a recovery vehicle while staring right at her. The next morning later, I drove by the same house and saw her outside with boxes in her arms and tears in her eyes. The boyfriend was right there. "You're crazy," he told her. "That car breaking down was divine intervention because it showed me I shouldn't be with you." He slammed the door in her face, and when she turned around, she saw me parked in the exact same spot as yesterday, smiling at her. Flint dangled my backpack over my head at my new school and taunted, "Reach for it, gnome." I was 4'11", and the whole hallway laughed while I jumped. When school ended, I cried the entire way home because I thought I was already done growing and was cooked for life. But when I got to the house, my new neighbor pushed a plant into my hands. "Water it every morning," he said. "As it grows, so will you." I stared at him blankly and could have sworn he was trying to make fun of me. But the next morning, my jeans stopped above my ankles. I'd grown an inch overnight. I immediately banged on the neighbor's door door to find out what the hell he'd given me, but his house was empty. It was like no one had ever lived there. But I kept watering it every morning, and every morning my clothes fit worse and I stood a little taller. 2 weeks in Flint barely reached my shoulder, and he moved out of my way without a word. I couldn't believe it, and I laughed to myself. We got magic plants before we got GTA 6, and after just 3 weeks, I was 6'7", starting center on varsity, dunking in warm-ups while the whole gym went quiet. Girls would even wave at me during games, and I felt like I was him. One night, I was thanking the plant for everything it had done for me when a white light poured straight through my curtain. The glass cover I'd kept over the plant was shattered across my carpet, and the plant was sitting on the windowsill like someone had put it there. The neighbor stepped out from behind the tree, the same one whose house had sat empty for weeks. "It came back for the plant," he screamed. "Push it down now, or it'll take you instead." I immediately pushed the plant out of the window. Suddenly, a green light shone so bright it burned my eyes, and when I opened my eyes, the plant was gone. I've been 6'7" ever since, and now at school they call me Le Bum instead of Gnome. I was in my room when I caught a smell of something burning. I rushed to open the door and saw the entire downstairs glowing an orange flame. The fire spread towards me, and my chest locked up. But when I reached into my pocket, my inhaler wasn't there. I tried to just run, but a giant pillar fell in front of me and blocked me. And when I ran back to the window, I realized the concrete driveway was too far down to jump. I opened the window and screamed, "Help!" But the crowd of people outside our 10-foot gate just stood frozen in shock, watching my house burn. I felt the air get hotter as the smoke was now pouring under my door. My asthma made every breath feel like suffocating, and my lungs gave out. I slid down the wall and pressed my face into the carpet because the air was supposed to be clearer here, but all I felt was a crushing heat in my lungs. I began gasping, and that's when I heard glass shatter downstairs. I tried screaming help, but no sound came out, and suddenly a heavy thud rang out outside my room. My door flew open, and a teenage kid stumbled in, covered in smoke and dust. He ran over and scooped me up, his hands blistered and burnt from the hot pillar he'd just shoved out of his way. His left arm hung at a wrong angle, and the skin on his face was peeling from the heat, but he didn't slow down. He carried me out the burning front door, and we dropped onto the grass. The crowd was still outside the gate, watching through the bars. I clawed at his shirt, still choking. "My inhaler! I need my inhaler!" And that's when he dug through his pocket and pressed his own inhaler to my lips. I've got asthma too. I sucked in the oxygen and realized the only person who ran into the burning building to help me was a teenager with asthma of his own. I was camping with my 5-year-old son when I unzipped our tent at night to pee and came face to face with 3 bear cubs. But when I looked up, a huge mama bear stood right over them, staring dead at me, and let out a low growl. My whole body locked up, and I backed away so slow I couldn't even close the flap. I'm a wildlife biologist, so I knew the one rule: never get between a mama and her cubs. But my son, wide awake on his iPad, saw them through the open flap. "Oh, Daddy, I want to keep one!" I'd spent all day teaching him bears were dangerous, and now I had to keep us both alive. The iPad's glow caught a cub's eye, and it started waddling straight toward the light in my son's hands. "See, Daddy? He likes me." I reached for the zipper to seal us in, but my son lunged past me. Come to Papa." The cub padded right up to the screen next to my son, and the mama's growl deepened into a roar. My chest went tight. I tried to grab the cub to set it back out, moving slowly so she stayed calm, but my son yanked it into his chest. "No, he's mine. I'm Papa Bear." The cub squealed, and the mama tore through the flap, her claws shredding the nylon as she forced her whole body inside. She was in the tent, drool roping from her teeth, her eyes locked on my son. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, but I couldn't move because the second I did, she'd attack me first, then my son. The iPad blared a Roblox video, and all 3 cubs' heads snapped toward it. This was my chance. I snatched the iPad off the tent floor and hurled it out through the shredded flap into the darkness. My son's jaw dropped as the cubs loosened from his grip and bolted after the glowing screen, scrambling out of the tent, and the mama wheeled around and charged after her babies. My son dove toward the opening, trying to chase after it. "My iPad!" I caught him by the ankle and yanked him back into my chest, my hands shaking as the last of the bears crashed off into the trees. Those cubs never wanted my son. They were iPad babies just like him.
কিভাবে খবর পায় ওরা আমরা আসার আগে আগে সেইটা খোঁজো নাইলে সিন্ডিকেট ধরা যাবে না। চলো সামনে দিকে চলো।
200 টাকা।
হ্যাঁ, এটা তো দেখেই বুঝতেছি একদম সেম কেস। আমাদের রোগী যে বাঁচবো সেই এই হাসপাতালের সামনে ম্যাক্সিমামই কিন্তু ভাই দালাল। এক রোগ হইব আর পাঠাইবো আরেক ডাক্তারের কাছে।
একটু দাঁড়ান, আমাকে একটু লইয়ে যান, মোরা তো চিনি না, টাকা পয়সা আছে।
মারে ওষুধ কিনতে টাকা লাগে না।
আর আমাদের যা হওয়ার তো আম্মা হয়েই গেছে। খারাপ
তোর কত বন্ধু বান্ধব সেখানে চাষ পাইনি,
তো কোনো কথা ছিল না।
এই হাসপাতালে কয়টা পিএইচডি করা ডাক্তার আছে তাতে সন্দেহ আছে, কিন্তু আমি যে পিএইচডি করা বাট পারে এতে কোনো সন্দেহ না।
আরে মনে হয় খেপে ব্যস্ত আছে, হইতে পারে আশপাশে মনে হয় কোন জানি বুঝাইতে আস। আমার কামান কর
না দাদা, আমাকে ভুল আছে অনেক। এই যে লোকগুলো আমরা ঠিক করছি।
কথা কইছ না, যে যেরকম আছে থাক, কাম করতে থাক বেটা।
দাদা এর মধ্যে আজকে আবার সমস্যায় কও দেই। রেখা
গত রাত তোমার এমন অবস্থা ছিল, তুমি তো অ্যাড্রেস বলতে পারছিলে না। তারপর কি করবো, জসিমউদ্দিন অনেক
কোথায় নিয়ে যাবা?
আরে তুমি ভুলে গেছো আজকে না তন্ময়ের বাসায় পার্টি, আমরা তো সবাই মিলে এটা
চলছে না, সবকিছু একদম নীরব। সেটাই, ওইটা প্যারা নেই, ওইটা আর ম্যানেজ করে নিব। তুমি বলো। নো, আই এম সিরিয়াস। আজকে এখন
আমি একটা অন্যায় করে ফেলছি, আমাকে মাফ করে দাও।
কি অন্যায় করছিস তুই?
শুধু বাসার সবাই ভালো আছে? এসো ভিতরে এসো।
সুমন ভাইয়ের ছেলে সালমানের সাথে যদি বিয়েটা ছিল না,
বলে ফেলো।
কি একা একা
আমি আর কখনোই যাবো না, এসব পার্টিটাতে সব বাদ। আমি তোমাকে ছুঁই
ধরবি না তুই আমাকে। জিশান মুভিটা দেখছেন?
না, এখনো দেখা হয়নি।
খুব সুন্দর মুভি। মুভির গান
হয় না।
আব্বাও যে আমাদের এভাবে ছেড়ে চলে যাবে,
বোমে মরিচ,
খুব ভালো হয়।
বোমে মরিচ দেন। একটা ফুচকাটা হলো কিনা?
একটু নেন না।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, মামা আসুক তারপর শুরু করি।
আমরা সবাই মিলে তোরে মাফ করে দিল, আল্লাহ তাআলা তোর জীবনও মাফ করে।
সুস্থ মানে হ্যাঁ নাচবেন না, কোনো বিবেকবান সুস্থ
কারণ এরকম ব্যবহার করছিল ওই দিন।
পানিটা খাও। আহা
বসতে দে, বসেন না।
রিক্সার ব্যাটারি ডাউন হয়ে গেছে।
বসেন বসেন। কি
মা, তুমি এইসব চিন্তা করো কেন?
এক নাম্বারই দিছি, তোমার আম্মা ভালো হয়ে যাবে। চল।
ধন্যবাদ। একটা মিনিট, আপনি মেডিকেলেরই কিছু একটা ব্যবসা করেন?
তুই জানো না কি করে?
কিছু খাবা না?
আপনার কথা শেষ করেন, তারপর খাবেন।
আসতে পারলি না, কাম কাজ গুছাইছো কিছু?
না, তুমি গুছাইছো?
আমিও তো কিছু গুছাইতে পারিনি।
নতুন ডাইরেক্টর আইছে, আইছে পর বলে মেডিকেলের অবস্থা ভালো, পাবলিক সব দেই হেনে যায়।